Hello everybody and welcome to Fintech Futures. We are here today at Finovate Europe in London, UK. My name is Tyler Page. I'm a reporter for Fintech Futures, and today I'm very happy to be joined by the CEO and co-founder of Kern AI, Johannes Hötter. Johannes, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining me today. You've come from Germany, I believe.
Yeah, exactly, from Bonn.
Yes, and it was a good flight, you said.
Everything perfect, yes.
Fantastic. We're very happy to have you here at this event here in London and to be speaking with you today. You've just done a demo this afternoon of Kern AI. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went?
Yeah, the demo was exciting. It was a live demo, which is always something special. Because you always want to make sure that everything works exactly as you hope, but went perfectly fine. It was amazing.
Fantastic. It's very, from what I viewed, I was very thankful not to be on the stage because it was very much like, go, wasn't it? But lots of really interesting technologies and concepts being presented for sure. Like there was not one where I was like, oh, it's boring, like everybody had something to say and a reason to say it, which I loved. Before we get into our conversation about Kern AI and your solution and everything, why don't you give us a little bit of color into what Kern AI is, who you are, and more about the origin story, really?
Yeah, of course, happy to do that. So we initially started Kern as a student consultancy. So I've been in the field of AI for roughly 8 years now. And we started very broadly. So we did projects during our master's degree, we is my co-founder and me, ranging from weather prediction up to database chatbots and e-commerce AI, so very broad ranges. And back then, roughly in 2020, we fell in love with natural language processing. We saw GPT-2 back then, which was mind-blowing. You could tell, okay, this is quickly becoming much better. And so what we were doing a lot is we were working with insurers and banks, and what we could tell is the teams that put use cases actually into production and were very successful, they never worried about the algorithm, right? So when you think about AI software, typically consists of an algorithm and the data. They always worried more about, okay, how can I be sure that the data that I have really suits my use case? And so we saw this trend and we thought, okay, if the algorithms themselves become better and better, we should focus on giving tools to companies to make the data better and better. And that's how Kern got started. Initially a student consultancy and then transitioning into a software company.
That's really interesting because I agree with you wholeheartedly there that these models are only as good as the data that they're fed with. Do you know what I mean? Like you're only as fast as your slowest runner.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We're delving into that. We're here really to talk more about data-centric retrieval augmented generation. A very big term, very big term, very complex term. What does that term mean for Kern AI?
Yeah, I agree. It's a difficult term. So retrieval augmented generation, it sounds complex, but it's quite simple. It just means if you think of ChatGPT, you know that depending on how you formulate a question, you get different outputs, right? So in retrieval augmented generation, the idea is ChatGPT itself, and with ChatGPT I just mean large language models in general, they are already extremely capable. They have a very broad world knowledge and they can answer a lot of complex questions, but they need context. So for instance, if I asked something like, I'm a consultant and would like to work as a lecturer on the site, is that covered? The large language model can only answer this question if it has the context of my policies, of my tariff side. And that's the idea of retrieval augmented generation. You don't start completely from scratch building your own large language model, but you take something that already exists, that is extremely smart in a way. You just try to understand how can I improve the input into this model. That's retrieval augmented generation.
That's really interesting in that it sort of like expands the scope of these large language models, That's, I think, from ones that I've played around with, they've been sort of limited with what they know and what they're able to say, and this actually makes complete sense. And it's really difficult to argue against data-centric RAG because it's like why would you want something that was less capable?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's like, well, it needs to be fed with data in order to produce this outcome.
Yeah.
What kind of challenges does this data-centric RAG approach solve?
Yeah. So generally the idea of data-centric RAG, retrieval augmented generation, means, to put it in simple terms, let's say we have an hour time to build a solution. Data-centric means you spend 55 minutes just looking at the data, trying to understand how is my data connected. So do I have tariffs that are related to other tariffs, tariff generations, like just how is my data connected? And I just spend 5 minutes on the algorithm. That's kind of like the overall methodology, the idea of data-centric RAG. And the idea is that's typically the bottleneck in the overall system. So let's say, for instance, we are an insurance company, just for the sake of simplicity, and we want to answer the question of a customer. We need to understand which contract does this customer have, right? If we by accident pick another contract and try to answer the question with that contract, we get something completely wrong, even if the model is super smart. That's data-centric RAG. And so that's what kind of the challenges that you're trying to overcome is leveraging this technology, but making sure it's reliable, trustworthy, and actually works on your own use cases. That's data-centric RAG.
And how soon are we going to see this approach become an industry standard?
I do believe, really believe it will be this year and next year.
In our lifetime, hopefully.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because what you were able to see is the last year was the year of demos, right? Because you had a lot of retrieval augmented generation demos that felt like magic. You would say, here's my ChatGPT, I have a document, I connect them, wow, and all of a sudden knows so much about my company. Yeah. But you were able to tell, okay, if you scale the amount of data that the large language model has access to, it scaled the complexity. And the only way to overcome this is with data-centric RAG. So any kind of data team that wants to put a Gen AI use case into production, and that's all of the data teams, because a lot of budget is being spent on Gen AI at the moment. The only way is via data-centric RAG. So I'm 100% sure that it will very soon get a lot of attention, and I think it will already happen this year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Kern AI is sort of ahead of the curve then in that sense. How do you think that this approach, as with anything in any industry, how do you think it can be adopted both safely and effectively?
I think what we always tell our customers is to think in steps. You don't need to go, same with autonomous driving. You have level 0, only the human is driving. Level 5, only the car is driving. Don't go from level 0 to level 5, right? That would be too much. Yes. But there's a level 1, like the parking assistant in a way, and you can easily build a parking assistant now. So we try to tell our customers, do it in an iterative approach, make small steps and learn a lot. That seems to be a way that works very well with data-centric RAG as well. Because you can, for instance, carve out the data domain that you want to start with. So for instance, one product line or one general problem. And if you start with that, you can quickly get something up and running. You see the first value. You can get people very excited about this in your own company, which I think is also very crucial. And so it's something to build trust, to get quick results, and from there plan, okay, what are my next steps? It seems to be a good approach.
I like that. Very sort of phased, very controlled approach. I think that's a good answer. In terms of Kern AI, I mean, you've had quite a day today already. You're here again tomorrow, as we're in day one. You were founded in 2020. You've actually made quite a lot of development within your company in the last 4 years. Yep. You have offices in Berlin and Bonn, if I'm right in saying that. You're going at light speed. What can we expect you to do next? Yeah.
So we want to be pioneers in this data-centric RAG space, right? So we will spend a lot of effort and time trying to educate people on how they can implement this approach. Yeah. And we see that it's actually the way that brings those use cases into production. So we at Kern, we just want to do as much as possible to boost this kind of approach and also grow a lot with this approach. And we see it's basically the approach that's necessary to bring Gen AI with industries like insurance or finance into production. So that's where we want to head and do a lot of pioneering work in that way.
That's really fantastic. Well, Johannes Hötter, the co-founder and CEO of Kern AI, it's been a pleasure to meet you today.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's joined this conversation online. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. For more information, please follow us along at fintechfutures.com. And until then, I shall see you next time. Thank you.